for starting off with an easy one, Tom. I mean, as you say, it's clearly an extraordinarily difficult period for a lot of working people. We've seen since the kind of recession really hit in 2007, 2008, some very hard times in parts of the private sector, and some very tough issues being faced up to. A lot of people working short time hours, accepting significant cuts in their earnings in order to perhaps save their jobs, facing up to those kind of dilemmas. But the real squeeze now over this next period in particular coming in the public sector. And around 6 million people work across our public services, and the kind of agenda for them is pretty bleak. George Osborne announced we're going to have a pay freeze for the next 2 years right across all the public services. Inflation, if you measure it by the old measure of RPI, is currently running at 4.7%. So a pay freeze is a 4.7% real terms pay cut. An awful lot of people feeling desperately insecure about their jobs. We're now beginning to see the announcements trickle out, local authority by local authority, public service by public service, as people are planning their budgets for the coming year or couple of years. I mean, so far the tally in local government is around 120, 130,000 people who've been put on notice of redundancy already. And of course, not just public service workers with that fear. All those little voluntary groups that help deliver public services in different ways, Citizens Advice Bureau that rely on the little grant from the local authority that keeps them ticking over, charitable groups of all sorts now seeing that squeeze coming through. It won't get anything like the attention of some of the bigger numbers about the big services. But communities feeling that squeeze. So the squeeze on jobs and pensions, absolutely. I mean, David Cameron in Parliament a couple of days ago said that he wanted to see the unions engage in constructive dialogue and being prepared to engage in constructive dialogue. Well, when George Osborne announced that pensions in future are going to be uprated by CPI rather than RPI, which reduces the value of your pension at a stroke by about 15%, there wasn't any constructive dialogue about that. When in the Comprehensive Spending Review, he announced that he was looking for savings in the cost of public sector pensions of around £1.8 billion on top of some other savings that have been already committed to as a result of negotiations a few years ago. There wasn't any constructive dialogue about that. That equates to about a 3% increase in the contribution you have to make to your pension as a public service worker. So whether it's pensions, whether it's jobs, whether it's pay, there is going to be a real squeeze. And that may lead to difficult disputes. But having said that, Tom, you are absolutely right that there is a particular challenge to the trade union movement in how we respond. We have to represent members and deal with all of those issues. But what we don't want to do is walk into that trap of being able to be characterized as simply looking after our own narrow self-interest and being prepared to kick lumps out of the rest of the community in order simply to fight that fight on behalf of our members. And we have a very careful debate about what strategy we should pursue in our campaign against the cuts, and there's big arguments about the macroeconomics of all of this that we absolutely need to engage in. But just in terms of the strategy for the campaign, all the unions through the TUC agreed absolutely we have to try and build the broadest possible coalition with groups representing other interests in the community, the users of services, and so on. And the objective of that campaign is to put real political pressure on coalition MPs, including in their own backyard, to put pressure in turn on the government to change course and contemplate a very different kind of approach to the deficit, with a view to trying to build a very different kind of economy. So, Tom, I could go on and on, but this is meant to be a conversation, but that's a core point. We recognise we have to build that kind of broad coalition and not walk into the trap that they would wish to set for us of simply being characterised as looking after our own and not giving a monkey's about the rest.